Hello, everybody. Welcome to our MPF webinar for the month of July. We're delighted you're here, and we have a really interesting program about due diligence on laterals. Uri, how you doing?
I am great, John. Heard you've had some tough weather out in Atlanta lately. What's going on there?
Killing me. I'll briefly, as we open up, this one's a little more spontaneous than most, and I've been without internet for 4 days in my home-based office. We didn't have power for 2 days, so I'm kind of scrambling and at visiting a well-adorned office. You can see the beautiful artwork here, the client in Atlanta, and they've been kind enough to set me up and give me some Wi-Fi so we can run the show. Michael Ellenhorn, our guest speaker, you're going to love this guy. He's got a lot to say, good advice to managing partners. I'm pumping you up, Michael. Say hello. Where are you today?
I am in beautiful St. Louis, Missouri, where we have also experienced our own weather-related issues recently. But I do have power, and I have internet, and everything is functioning. And John and Uri, thanks very much for putting this on. Really happy to be here.
You're our 51st show, and I see Roger Barton has just entered the room. So he'll get set up shortly and be joining us. Roger's the managing partner of a fast-growing firm based in New York City, and he spends about 70–80% of his time recruiting, and he is doing it quite successfully. So we're going to invite Roger. Hi, Roger.
Hello, guys. How is everyone?
We are doing very well. Glad you're here, and thank you for joining us. Look forward to your comments. Roger, you're in your beautiful office space in Manhattan?
I am, with electricity and air conditioning and all that good stuff in Manhattan.
Stop. I got to go check into a hotel.
Keep it up, guys. This is great. This is great. John is do this.
You guys love to watch me sweat, don't you? So we got a really great show, everybody. As always, we're going to be recorded. We'll archive this on our website with the handouts. We got the polling questions. Uri and I have a pretty good formula after, hopefully after 50 of these webinars. It's hard to believe, Uri. This is number 51.
We know a little thing about this.
Well, you'd think by now. But folks love the banter, love the polling data, and Michael and Roger are kind enough to, talk to you afterwards. If you want to follow up with conversation, questions, we'll have their phone numbers, email addresses out there. And again, thank you, gentlemen, for being here with us. This is the old white guy panel, isn't it?
I mean, I'm white. I don't know what else you're talking about, John.
Yeah.
No. You're no spring chicken, Gutfreund.
Yeah.
So, Roger, I'm sorry I didn't connect with you at noontime to kind of go through things. So,
We'll do it live, off the cuff, no problem.
We're not worried, Roger. You're a pro, and you've been on several of our panels, and always inspire and educate those of us who have heard you participate. We are at, I try to run this thing on time, 1:59 will start shortly. Everybody can see us, Roger. We're the only ones on camera. We'll invite people to do some audience polling and maybe a show of hands type thing. And if they type in some questions, Uri kind of mines those if we want to entertain some audience questions. But people love the banter, love the data, and we'll be bringing on plenty of that over the next hour. So as I look at my watch here in stormy Atlanta, it's 2 o'clock. So let's get started. Welcome everybody to our MPF webinar for July. Here with Uri Gutfreund, our co-host, and got a great program on due diligence lateral hires. And we've got an expert in this area, Michael Ellenhorn, with Decipher Investigative Intelligence, and he does a lot of work with big law and smaller and mid-sized firms in helping them vet laterals and go beyond just the resume and a Google search. really get in there and look at the book of business, cultural compatibility, all those good things. And then we'll invite Roger Barton, who's a real life, real living managing partner, to talk to us about the realities of recruiting talent. I know, Roger, you spent a lot of time doing the talent recruiting, and we'll talk about how you do it and what lessons might you impart to our audience. So let me scroll through here. Welcome, Uri. How are things?
Things are good, John. Good to be here. And as you said earlier, can't believe it's number 51, but onward we go.
We were much younger and lighter and had a little more hair then. That was right at the onset of COVID, and these have been fun to do, and we're in a good rhythm here. Uri sells insurance risk management products to law firms, Senior Vice President of Managing Principal at Ames and Goff. And I run these managing partner programs, consulting on the side. And so great to see you, Uri. Our guest speakers, Michael Ellenhorn and Roger Barton. Michael, say hello and tell us a little bit about Decipher, just a little bit, what you do.
Sure. John, Uri, Roger, thanks so much for having me today. Really happy to be here. Decipher Investigative Intelligence is headquartered in beautiful St. Louis, Missouri, where we do have power and water and electricity. It's all good. And we help all sorts of businesses, including large, medium, and small size law firms with their investigative intelligence needs. And that stems from vetting lateral partner hires to advising on talent market strategy, which I'll get into a little bit later, and doing data analysis and analytics, including litigation support and other things for our clients' clients. So that's kind of a broad brush of what we do. But there is, I would just end by saying that in this new era of intense data focus in every vertical, there is an enormous amount, not only at issue, but also at stake in the legal vertical. And you need strong data and strong intelligence to make proper decisions.
Thank you, Michael. We'll learn more about what you do, and got a little segment set aside to talk a little bit about how costly mistakes can be if you hire poorly. Roger Barton, how are you, sir?
Good, John. Thanks for having me. Just some background for folks who I may not know, but I've seen the list and there's some friends on the call. So good to, I guess, not quite see you all, but have you all with us. I left big law, fell on my head to found the firm Barton LLP. We are now about 45 lawyers. We are based in New York with an office also in Nashville and in LA. Much of our growth has been, a parallel of organic growth and lateral partner hiring. So I'm happy to be on the call and tell you all the mistakes that I've made.
Well, and share some successes, Roger, as well. What's working for you and what advice you might dispense. Roger has talked about this at our live conferences in Atlanta. And Roger, looking forward to your input. And thanks for joining us. When we got Michael committed to this, we wanted a couple of managing partners to ground us and talk about life in the real world. So Roger, thanks for joining us, and we'll look forward to your contributions. You can straighten us out if necessary. So before we get into it, shameless plugs. We're third Wednesdays for these webinars. They're free. So keep coming. We get about 100 to 150, 200 managing partners typically. So those have been great. This is number 51. Fall, our Empowering Women Conference registration is open. This is our fall program in Chicago. We'll have only women. It's by women, for women. And so if you're interested, take a look at that. Our weekly goes out and our website's hanging out there too. So that's a little bit about what we do. Today's program, we're talking about.
John, can I interrupt you for a second? Your camera seems to have gone off.
There it is. Thank you for interrupting me on that, because I'm working. Usually I got 3 screens and a camera and a headset and all this stuff. Now I'm just flying on my laptop. in a visiting attorney office at a law firm here in Atlanta. So we're doing the best we can. I don't know, for those who joined us recently, we haven't had power for a couple of days. I've had no internet for 4 days, so it's been a little struggle this week with the big storms moving through. So today's program, due diligence. And when you hire people, make sure you're hiring the right people who are going to deliver the goods and fit with your culture. Today we have 110 managing partners, firm leaders registered. We'll do our polling and share all that with you as we come out of the call, and hand out materials. Michael's going to give us some stuff. He's got some nice white papers. Go check out his website on due diligence and what's going on out there. And as always, we want your feedback. Tell us what you like, what you didn't like, what we can do to make these more valuable programs for managing partners. Our first polling question, everybody. If you've been with us before, you know we like to run polling questions. And this is mostly for Roger and for Michael as to firm sizes represented on today's call. If you would, vote early, vote often. Being in Georgia, we are good at vote counting, sort of. And so firm sizes coming in. Uri, what do we usually see on these firm sizes?
I think we're going to see the 26 to 100. That's what we usually see.
Yeah, that's pretty representative of the firm sizes. A few smaller firms, less than 10 lawyers, a couple of more than 100, but hitting our sweet spot. We call it mid-law. So that's for you and Roger, Michael, just so you know firm sizes. Before we invite our panel, bringing on data, and Uri, you can jump in, and people love the data. And so here in May, our conference in Atlanta, we had 105 managing partners from all over the country, Canada. And here's what they told us were their top concerns. This is in May. There's talent retention. By far, number one, profitability, succession. Of course, all these issues are interrelated, and Michael's going to tell us how expensive it is to not make good hires. It really impacts profitability. Any surprises, Roger? You were with us in Atlanta, I believe, this year, weren't you?
Yes, I was. So I've seen this. No surprises. I think.
Yes, you have.
This is
Same old, same old.
Yeah, it's square on. I mean, it's interesting, succession planning, which we'll get into, does dovetail in with the lateral hiring. So we can talk about that.
Indeed. Michael, any surprises for you looking at this this survey result?
No. And John, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said before that, talent retention and proper hiring on the front end are inextricably linked. And Roger's point about succession planning, it all is really part of the same pie. So no real surprises here.
What I'm surprised it's how technology, AI, cyber, only 6%. And I think we're going to see that number really jump in the coming months and years. We're hearing a lot of buzz about AI, of course, and we're going to be doing webinars on AI next month. In fact, we've got Tony DeSimone coming back to us, who was a hit in Atlanta. When folks registered, Uri, talk to us about this survey result. I want to make sure we get you in the conversation. Don't leave you hanging.
Sure, yeah. So we asked our first registration question, which is at what level, if any, are you pursuing talent at your firm? So number one is income partners, almost 40% of you, income partners, followed by senior associates. I think there's pretty close blending, and those are the two major categories. Some equity partners, some junior associates, but those really that bulk of that senior non-equity lawyers is what we saw. John, did this surprise you?
No, I think we've seen the action here, and you pick one was the way we phrased this question. Pick one. Mm-hmm. It wasn't all that apply. The action is with income partners here. Yep. And I think we've seen that fairly consistently, even before COVID. Roger, what say you about this?
No, I think it's spot on. I mean, it's the usual where it's junior associates are hard to hire, or hard to retain, and therefore maybe not as attractive to hire. equity partners is a larger conversation, more complicated conversation. So I think this is good.
Well, and with AI, you know, we're hearing a lot of talk about our need for first, second, third year associates, paralegals, you know, if much of this work can be done, you know, by machines. And it's going to be interesting to see how all that pans out. But I'm not surprised by this. We also asked, do you do a good job vetting your potential laterals? This stunned me. Only 1/3 say, yeah, we're doing a good job. Whoa. 44% not sure. This is too important not to do a good job. Roger, are you surprised to see this?
Yes and no. I mean, I think, you know, we'll get into the details as to how one vets. And I saw one of your slides about the ethical considerations about vetting a lawyer coming in. It's a difficult thing to be able to say that you've really done it well. So I think not sure is probably an honest answer by a lot of firms.
These are anonymous. It's interesting when you get a public survey versus an anonymous survey, what you get. Michael, you know, you and I chatted about this result during one of our rehearsal calls, and you weren't surprised at all by this. I was stunned, to be honest.
No. In fact, we do surveys all the time, and when you look at anonymous surveys, actually, believe it or not, that yes number can be substantially lower than 1/3. It can be substantially lower than 1/3. So this doesn't surprise me at all. And the no's are certainly, you know, these are folks that know themselves well. They know their own firms very well. The number that actually is more concerning on that is the 44% that say they're not sure.
Sure.
Usually what that indicates is firms, generally speaking, don't always know. Well, Roger pointed this out. They're not always 100% sure where to turn to actually improve that hiring situation. And that's the difficult part. So that not sure number, I think, is the most important one, and it doesn't surprise me at all.
Do you think, generally speaking, big law does a better job than smaller and mid law at vetting laterals? Generally.
Yes, they have more resources at their disposal, and their systems and processes are more formalized. So, but a lot of that has to do, John, a lot of that has to do with resources. A lot of the folks that are on this program today, they don't really have any fully dedicated resource when it comes to talent acquisition and retention. And that's understandable because a lot of the firms are smaller. Completely understand.
We asked if you had in-house recruiting director, manager. This was kind of a loosely worded question. 43% say yes. Roger, do you have an in-house recruiting, retention director type person at your firm?
Yeah, he's the same guy that's on this webinar.
You wear a lot of hats, don't you?
I mean, there's a circle of people who are involved in the process, you know, at least initially, but no, there's not someone who's dedicated to it.
You're the man, you're the guy, huh? 57% don't have an in-house marketer. I've worked with a couple of mid-sized firms past couple of years who have hired in-house people. They're sick and tired of paying the headhunters. And let's take that money and bring it in-house and create someone who's going to do a lot of that work. Maybe still use some headhunters, but you know, bringing it in-house. I had a client in Pittsburgh. They put up their lawyers they brought in laterally over the last 10 years through their headhunters, and I think only like 3% of them were still with the firm. It was absolutely crazy. We've asked this question often. Uri, take us away.
Yeah, how do you feel? How do your partners at your firm feel about a potential merger or acquisition? So 54% of you said, yeah, we're okay with that as long as we are the purchaser. We're the dominant firm. Not interested in M&A, you know, bunch of people, roughly a third of you say, we're just not doing that. We're growing organically. And 9%, a small number of you say, we're okay if we are acquired. Now, right. We've been asking this question before, John. I think, what do you think about it?
That okay if we are acquired number seems to be creeping up. And I think much of it's due to a lack of succession planning. You know, We got no leaders, we got no rainmakers. What are we going to do with these 50, 60, 70 people? Let's find them a home and sell the place out. Most of the mid-sized firms involved in our MPF community do not want to be acquired, and they want to retain their culture and their autonomy and all those good things. Michael, this is probably, I don't know if you haven't seen this data from our community. Is this tell you anything here?
No, it's right in line. It's right in line. That middle number, the 54%. Okay, if we're dominant, we're the dominant firm. It reminds me of the farmer who says, "I don't want to own all the land in the world, just the land that's next to mine." Yes, every law firm wants to be the dominant firm in a combination. That's understandable.
Yeah, those mergers of equals tend to be the most challenging, when they're.
And John, I will say this about those firms that are not interested in M&A. When you don't have an acquisition strategy, or you don't necessarily have a defined growth strategy, if you're in a very niche area of law, that actually can be very sustainable. If you are a more broad-based business services firm, saying that you're not interested in M&A is a conscious choice. And and that we'll talk about this later, but John, your points all the time about having a strategy and thinking strategically, and affirmatively saying we are not interested in M&A is an affirmative choice, is an affirmative strategic choice.
Mm-hmm.
And in this market, that's tough.
Roger, I'll invite your comments here. You've been hanging around and seen us present this question over the years. Any observation?
It's really evolved. I mean, 10 years ago, lateral hiring wasn't even really a thing. I mean, I remember, particularly at the large firms, I was at a webinar like this, and Brad Karp from Paul Weiss was very proud to say we've never hired a lateral. We would never hire a lateral. It would take a year to interview a lateral if we ever did such a thing. And now, look at what's going on with Paul Weiss and Kirkland and the rest of them at each other. I think in the mid-market arena that we are all in, there are different drivers for why we would want to bring in lateral hires. Sometimes like the super large firms, where I think we all saw the stat about the $20 million partner, one who gets $20 million as compensation because they have a $100 million book of business. We're not doing that, and two, we can't be, I think, as strategic in folding in certain practices because we're just not going to have a platform to attract those folks. So then, what is our motivation for doing it? Why do we do it? How does it fit? And all of that. And I think the dominant firm stat is one where I think the firms are doing well. They don't want to upset culture. They are looking to add, volume of activity, which, is great, cross-selling and all the things that come with adding folks in, but they're not quite ready to upend the culture, the structure, the direction that they're going in. But some of those firms, we've seen this because your succession planning stat is so high, and anytime you run a conference, John, that's one of the most highly attended sections, right? A lot of firms in our size of the industry don't have a succession plan or don't have the right people in place for a succession plan. And they may not be the dominant firm, even though that's where they're going to market on it. So I think there's more within this data that I think we need to peel back on.
Yeah, we try to keep these questions pretty simple, and there's so much more you could drill down on because it begs questions when you look at this data. Roger, just for context, what big law firm did you spin out of, and when did you start Barton? Why did you start Barton and spin out a big law?
I was at Sidley Austin, and so I was at Sidley, and it was like a lot of firms. It went through some changes in management. Partners left and wanted me to go with them, and it just spurred my thinking into, well, I want to be one of 288 partners. Do I want to be one of 80 partners? What do I want to do, and how do I want to practice law? And naively, I guess, I just had this itch to grow a business. I think a lot of us, which is probably why your AI and technology response is not as high as it should have been. Most of us lawyers went to law school because we didn't do math very well. And math and technology are kind of the same thing to us.
Or you didn't like blood, that's my dad.
I didn't like blood. We didn't like it. Yeah. So for me, I liked business, and law is a business, and I thought it'd be pretty cool to practice law and grow a law firm. So it wasn't more nuanced than that. But as I got, and literally it was just myself, but as I got to a certain level, when I had associates working with me, we started plateauing, and it was like, how do you wake up as a relative small firm? I think we're 5 or 6 lawyers, and add another $1 million of revenue. January 1st. I hate January because you wake up and the books are closed. Okay, we got to do it again this year and add to that.
Maybe borrow, dip into that line of credit.
Yeah, but that's when kind of the light bulb went on in my mind is you can add revenue in a number of different ways. You can get new clients and sell as much business into those clients as you can, or you can hopefully attract some really quality partners to the firm who have a client base, who have a practice that's different than what you do. It's complementary, it's adjacent, maybe there's a bit of overlap, but there's still a fit. That's super important. And they come in with a slew of clients that maybe, they're not selling labor and employment into, they're not selling litigation into, they're not providing, cyber and data privacy services, whatever it may be. And it really can be a, 1 and 1 makes 3 type of combination. So that's when I started off on the path to really lateral hiring and all that. And that really took hold in around 2011, 2012.
And Michael, this was an interesting question you asked us to put in here. And this is a live polling question. I'll launch it shortly, but set us up. What percentage of laterals have been successful? What is that? What is success? Define that for us.
Well, you want to try and be as objective as you can, and you also don't want to overthink the question. But generally speaking, there are two large facets to success as a lateral. The first one is, have you integrated well, and are you a good firm citizen, right? Do you communicate? Do you share? Are you investing in the firm and its brand, et cetera, et cetera? And the second large kind of bucket is, have you been financially successful? Are you accretive? Is your business accretive? Are you growing? Did you bring the business that you promised you would bring? Are you profitable? So those are really the two big buckets. But it's not great to overthink the question. I think most managing partners will know pretty much off the top of their head whether a lateral has been successful or not.
And let's phrase this question in terms of lateral partners.
Yeah.
Equity income partners, not just, support staff. And Roger, how do you define success of a lateral lawyer partner at your firm?
Yeah, I think it's exactly what Michael said. I talked earlier about fit. And that's really how we view a candidate is, does that person fit? And fit to us is there a cultural fit? Are we aligned in terms of how we service clients, how we look at the legal industry, what we want to put forth in terms of value to clients? Are we all on the same page in those aspects of things? The other fit is going to be practice fit. Is that practice one that's complementary to what we do? Is it an offering that our clients, existing clients, would want to have, because that creates integration? That's one of the most important things, is having those lawyers who come in immediately get working with other lawyers in the firm, get working with other clients in the firm. So the practice fit is super important.
I know when we've talked in the past, you talk about how important that cultural fit is and that citizenship,
It's absolutely. And then, the hardest thing to evaluate, maybe Michael's got some insight into this, is skill set. I mean, we look to outside objective factors, the education, experience, so forth, but are they really good lawyers? And unless you've been across the table from them or in court or what have you, that skill set piece sometimes is very hard to nail down. But they've got to be excellent lawyers, because again, if they're not excellent, then the existing partners are not going to want to share their clients, risk, a bad result or bad experience. So that's the skill set is really hard. That's important.
Let me come back to cultural fit. As you're interviewing, you've identified a potential lateral, you're having lunch, you're interviewing. What questions do you ask? How do you assess whether or not this candidate is going to be a good fit? How do you figure that out?
God, it's like dating, right? I mean,
It is.
Which I married, my wife, we met in law school, so I can't really comment too much on that. But
no, you better not, because it will be recorded. She might.
No, that's okay. She can watch anything. No, it's there's a gut instinct of just, do you get along? Is it somebody you'd want to go out and have a beer with? That test. But then you need to get into the stories. How do you handle your clients? What is it they like about you? What do you do for them? Why are you better or different than any other lawyer that does what it is that you do? It's about really assessing client service. What are their values? What's their approach? What's important to them? It's reputationally what's important, because again, for us, we want to have that reputation as being a super high quality deliverer of legal services that's client focused first and foremost. Not every lawyer practices like that. I think you before you even engage in a lateral hire, work should be done internally to be able to answer the question of the firm that's doing the hiring. What's your culture? Why are you better or different? Explain your value proposition. What are you known for? What do you want to be known for? And then
how do you sift through the BS though, Roger? How do you sift through the BS? Because they're going to tell you what you want to hear over cocktails and dinner.
Well,
how do you?
I'm a litigator, so maybe asking those open-ended questions or asking questions that are leading where you might want to lead them down a path to see if they resist it or turn around. That there's all of that. But we interview pretty extensively before a lateral is brought in here. That person will meet with probably 60% of the partnership. And it's like a jury, right? You need to convince all 12 or all 6. There's always going to be 1 or 2 people who hear something that the others didn't hear. So that's important.
Yeah. Michael, you asked us to put this question in here. What do you think we're going to see once we reveal the election results?
My guess is that when you total everything up, that it'll be a coin flip. It'll likely be 50-50.
All right, what do you think? Give me a prediction.
I think
and by the way, do you have anything to add on what a successful lateral looks like?
Yeah, well, boy, we said a lot. I'm going to try and keep it short. 2 things. Number one, what Roger said is very interesting, and I think a lot of firms take that shortcut and they go to the lateral market before they know what they're selling, right? When we try to attract laterals, who are we? So they don't do that work. They try and shortcut that. Number one. Number 2, I think that fortunately, or rather, I'd say fortunately for people's egos, but unfortunately for the business of law, which is there is this. Everyone says they do a poor job at it. Everyone says they do a poor job at it. Look at this. How successful have you been? A lot of people, less than 25%, 25 to 50. I mean, these are not great numbers, and people are just, I think they're accepting of it. And then my last point is that most people go to the lateral market for adding revenue to the firm. And I think people are almost always disappointed in that. And I'm sure Michael and Roger can give us some insight as to why, but there's sort of this acceptance at most managing partners that, well, that's just the way it goes and it doesn't get better than that. And I'm not sure that's true, but you sort of get that sense in talking.
I find a lot of firms, they want to fill those empty offices. Nobody come back. I got all this office space and I need to put bodies in there. And they're not very discriminating. They want to get dollars coming in, wrong reason to hire people just to put put warm bodies in seats. Not good.
And John, lo and behold, if you look at the numbers, it was 51% said no, and 51% said yes. I don't know how we ended up with 102%, which is fine, but
Rounding error. Rounding error.
rounding
Right.
error. But
We had
it's-
70, let me see, we had 73% of our participants weighing in that. So,
Yeah.
you know.
And there was 51% said, no, and 51% said yes. So that's usually how it, I mean, we've done these polls a million times at Decipher, and that's usually how it breaks out. For most firms, it really is a coin toss.
All right, Michael, you're on. Michael provided about 180 slides originally, and I take it down to 4. So take us through. This is your time to talk to us. So tell us a little bit more about Decipher, how you guys go about vetting candidates, and then we'll walk through your contribution, your slide deck here.
No, absolutely. And I don't want to get too far into the weeds. Just saying a lot of this really reflects what Roger's already mentioned, is that assessing fit for lateral partner hires is very, very difficult. And without proper intelligence, background intelligence, a lot of times it's a crapshoot. Because as we all know, lateral partners are really not interested in being interviewed. They're very interested in being recruited, but they're not interested in being interviewed. And so it's a very delicate dance to really dig in to see whether the practice fit is going to be there, the quality is going to be there, whether they have the book of business that they say they have, whether that's going to port over, and all the rest of it. The reason we started Decipher Investigative Intelligence 8 years ago, and the reason why we started it was because we felt it was extraordinarily important that law firms had someone on their side. There are plenty of recruiters out there that are going to introduce you to many different potential lateral partner hires and tell you every time they are the greatest thing since sliced bread. They've got an unbelievable book of business. 110% of it's going to follow. It's unreal. And we decided in talking to a number of our clients, there needs to be somebody on the law firm side who is professionally and objectively vetting these folks, so that we know that we're actually getting what we think we're buying effectively.
But Michael, you're not a headhunter. As
No.
I understand it, we've got the client identified, and we're in the interviewing process, and we bring you in to dig deeper.
Exactly.
Beyond what
Exactly.
we see.
So we really, and John, we do 3 things. We do deep dive due diligence, pre-hire due diligence, primarily on lateral partner hires, but we do also some screening for associates. We do talent market strategy, which is helping firms really think strategically about their talent acquisition strategy, which involves making choices. And the third thing we do is data analytics and analysis, which really helps on benchmarking, especially when it comes to pipeline management and compensation. So those are really the 3 things that we do. And we work for some of the largest firms in the world, and we do plenty of work for mid-law. And so I've got 4 substantive slides that I want to walk through you, and John, you very helpfully queued up the first one.
Yeah, I'm going to move it on. We're looking at the clock here, so we.
No, I know. We're going to move it along.
I'll push you a little bit here.
But what I want to, the things that I want to point out is that red flags, right? Red flags when you're vetting a candidate.
Give us examples of some.
Exactly. Red flags range everything from some really scary stuff on social media, some things that might give you pause and maybe reputationally. There could be civil litigation issues, criminal litigation issues, all sorts of those things. And then it runs all the way to, as Roger brought up, do they have the quality? Are they going to actually port the business? And if you look at things, if you look at these stats, remember, we do hundreds and hundreds of these pre-hire due diligence projects a year. And if you look at these stats, they should cause you to pause a little bit on the folks that you're evaluating. So that's the first thing I want to leave you with, is that seriously vetting, thoroughly vetting your candidates is extraordinarily important, because the red
Michael,
flags are there.
Michael, you said the red flags are increased 50% over the last year, 2 years. Do you have any sense of why?
Yeah,
What
well,
are those flags where they increase?
Which red flags?
Right.
A big social media is a big part of it.
Social
But
media,
book
people
exa-
doing
but
stupid
book it-
stuff. Okay.
But book exaggeration is an enormous part of it. And there are also cultural issues, because we don't just do open source intelligence, we also do human intelligence. So there's cultural fit issues that certainly go into it. But a huge amount of it, honestly, is just over egging the pudding when it comes to what your promised book looks like.
Hey, Roger,
and-
have you seen any of that? Anybody exaggerating their claims?
Look, there's red flags that I think are easy, like social media, circle of friends, our own intelligence network. The harder ones, the exaggeration of the book. I mean, how do you really know? And I'll give you a couple different examples. Like, if I'm interviewing a litigator, it's all transparent, right? Everything's publicly filed, unless it's arbitration. I can look at what the docket is. I see if they're the attorney of record. I see the history of their cases, consistent representation of similar clients. You know where they are in the lifespan of those cases. The cases are likely to come over. I mean, it's easier. Transactional lawyer is much tougher. You need to get transaction histories, and again, the key question, which I think I'm not giving away state secrets, but great, you represented this client for however long. Who is the primary contact? Did you bring the client in? Who at the client are your relationships? Is it school friend that you've known for decades? Spouses or friends, you vacation together, or I inherited this from the partner who's still around, but I do all the work. That's a much different conversation.
Yeah.
That stuff's not coming, and if it comes, you're only going to get what they're currently working on until they transition the next matter to somebody back at the home office.
Before we jump, I mean, looking at their malpractice, and Uri tells the famous story of the Lateral that wasn't even a member of the bar.
Yeah, well, you could just Google out for time. I won't tell the stories. You can Google it, but there's several stories like that.
Oh,
Yeah.
I mean, and Uri, we've done many projects where there were issues with licensing. It's not as uncommon as you think.
Everyone should hire Michael, but at a minimum, have a lateral partner questionnaire. You got to do the practice due diligence. The other thing,
Do you have a checklist, Roger, a due diligence checklist you work on?
yes, we do, sure. But the other thing, which has, I'll share. The other thing that's come into vogue or importance now with COVID and remote working and all this other stuff, people are sitting in states practicing law they may not be admitted in. And if you're in Florida and certain other jurisdictions, that's going to be a problem. So, it's not just, oh, I'm a New York lawyer and I, have a New York license. Where are your clients? Where do you practice? Where do you live? Where do you spend some of your time?
Interesting. The Florida bar in the old days, I haven't looked at the rules. You had to have bricks and mortar, a bricks and mortar address.
Florida was really pre-COVID. Florida took the position that if you were a non-Florida lawyer with a primary residence in Florida and you were practicing law for clients on issues outside of Florida law, you were considered to be practicing law in Florida and engaging in unauthorized practice of law. That's relaxed a little bit now, but that kind of stuff exists. So it's not just checking your bar. Did you do your CLE and pay your $500? No, it's more than that.
But guys, before we move on, psychological assessments. You like them, not like them? What say you? Let me ask you, Roger, do you use psychological assessments as
No, we don't. And I'd be curious to actually do it for people in the firm just to see how we all test out. But, we don't do it.
And if that's a deliberate, obviously, decision, off-putting, you think, to the candidate, or?
Well, I think, look, and then this is maybe takes us into a little bit of a tangent, but, this recruiting business / interviewing, it is recruiting. And, the big firms, if you're bringing $100 million book of business, you're going to expect it's a 6 to 12 month process, and they're going to look at every single thing that they possibly can about you. firms of our size, we're generally competing for these candidates. There's a balance between how intrusive do you want to be, how long do you want to take, how difficult do you want to be seen as a place to work by asking of all these things. And Michael, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what is the balance on that. I imagine some candidates would appreciate, wow, this firm is diligent, they're serious, and they don't want to make a mistake, and I want to work for a place like that, versus these guys are a pain in the neck, they can't get out of their own way, they've done nothing but hire consultants. Sorry, guys.
Michael, that opens the gate for you.
And I don't want to work for a place like that. So I don't know where that comes out, but that's kind of.
Yeah.
We find about 10% of firms claim to use psychological assessments as part of their vetting process. Michael, what say you about Myers-Briggs?
Yeah, on psychological assessments, I'll just tell you this. Many of them can be very helpful, but the key part of a really successful use of psychological assessments, especially in the lateral space, is you have to have a baseline for the firm as a whole. And where firms generally don't like to go on psych assessments is they don't want to go through the process of establishing a firm-wide baseline, because that involves resource, it involves testing. You also may not like the answers you get. But my point being, doing assessments on incoming laterals without establishing your firm baseline doesn't really do much for you. So and that's one of the reasons why firms tend not to do it. Roger, to your question about getting that balance correct, what I have found, and Roger, my guess is this is what you found in your process as well, is that it's all about communication. If you're very upfront with candidates at the beginning of the process about what the process is going to be, how thorough it's going to be, and why it's so important to the firm's culture to get it right, they will tend to be understanding if they know what's coming down the pike. And if you adhere to the prescribed practice and process, what candidates really get bent out of shape about, is one more meeting, one more meeting. Oh, the folks in Houston haven't, they need to weigh in on this. And sorry, we forgot about that. The CFO is going to fly with his family for the next 2 weeks, but as soon as he gets back, then we're going to pick it. That drives candidates certifiably nuts.
Interesting. Roger, these numbers look about right?
Yeah, I mean, depends. I mean, I think the comp number definitely depends on the level of person, which market you're getting them at. Recruiting is a function of the comp number. Onboarding, I'm not sure what's in that number, but yeah, I mean, it's that. But what's not on this chart, and you mentioned before, a bad hire, it's good old Warren Buffett. You can lose me money, but don't hurt the brands, right?
Right.
So you make a bad hire, you're going to hurt the brand, and I don't know what that number looks like, but it's not a pleasant number.
No.
Michael, you want to comment on this a little bit?
Roger's absolutely right. You can't. It's really hard to quantify reputational damage on the brand. But when we looked at the non-AmLaw 200 data set that we use, these numbers are based on real numbers, right? And so when we're looking at mid-law, we're looking primarily at firms that are somewhere in that 50 lawyer to 200 lawyer space. And so when you look at, and not just equity partners, but also income partners as well. And so this is an average. This is an average number. And there are a lot of things that aren't in this, but we tried to include a sort of median number of direct costs without getting into la-la land. And so all this is to tell you is that if you do make bad hires and if you make mistakes, right, you will end up spending a lot of money, because as we all know, law firms, as difficult as it is to hire a lateral partner, it is even more difficult to dispatch them. And so as you are ringing up those draw tallies every month and all of your indirect costs every month, it's very, very difficult for firms to pull the trigger on that. And so that $620,000 dollar number is actually a little bit on the shy side of that.
I mean, the point being, it's an expense, it's an investment, it's expensive, and mistakes
It
are
is.
costly
It
and
is.
very distracting. And we don't even talk about the damage to reputation that Roger speaks to.
It is really expensive, and you have to be really careful about it. What I do want to point out on our performance talent acquisition model, and by the way, I should mention, as Roger did, we have a model lateral partner questionnaire, and anybody who would like it can get in touch. We're more than happy to share it. Good, thorough lateral partner questionnaires are massively important to any hiring process.
Michael, when in the interview process, recruiting process, do you suggest the questionnaire be submitted to the candidate and returned?
Yeah, after you've had a second meeting, and there is a meeting of the minds between the firm and the candidate that they want to pursue discussions seriously. So you've done your initial drinks or your dinner, you've had a good time, you obviously like each other, there's obviously something to discuss. They come in, they meet a couple of the principals, and you actually now have a more thorough, like, substantive discussion, all still fine, you like each other, all the rest of it. It's at that point when they decide, you know what, I actually want to engage seriously in this process, and the firm thinks the same way. That is when you need the LPQ. If you're doing it later in the process than that, you're taking a really big risk. And John, this goes to things that you've said a million times when you're talking about thinking strategically. If you don't have that data and intelligence, so you don't have the data and intelligence in hand to make those critical decisions, you could spend months and months pursuing a candidate that was never viable. And I mean, we lawyers just don't have that kind of time.
Michael, should a firm be prepared to share its financials, its partnership agreements, its client lists with the candidates? And if so, that's very proprietary information.
Absolutely.
And if I'm a candidate, I want to see that stuff.
John, the old adage, I'll show you mine if you show me yours. It's the way those processes work. The candidate needs to produce a completed LPQ earlier on in the process. And once there is a meeting of the minds, and this could be 3, 4, 5 meetings in, once you really think there is a pathway forward because we like the quality, we like the skill set, we like the cultural aspects, this is going to work, we believe this is going to work, then it is incumbent on the firm to disclose to the candidate, hey, you need to know what you're getting into, especially if you're coming in as an equity partner. But I'll tell you, there is a sizable, depending on how fast your process is, there is a sizable gap in time between when the lateral partner needs a full disclosure on the LPQ and when they get access to the firm's books. That is a significant gap in time. Now,
those unfunded retirement obligations, that's a deal killer.
I do want to point out really quickly before we move on, because we're getting kind of late in the day here.
We are getting close to the top of the hour.
It's very, very important that firms think strategically about how they grow. And when you start thinking about talent acquisition, if you can flip back to that earlier slide, John, just really quickly, there are talent acquisition models that are objectively based that are not rocket science. They are not rocket science. And the one I'm showing you is very rudimentary, but it works. And if you are thinking strategically, and again, feel free to get in touch. We're more than happy to walk through this with you. And I know we're getting late in the day, but there are very streamlined acquisition models that will put you light years ahead of where you are now. They will not break the bank, and they will not cause you to pull your hair out. They're actually very, very straightforward. So, we don't have time to go through.
Yeah, I know. We could go all these webinars. It's like,
yeah,
once we get into it, we could go on all afternoon.
Let me tell you, I'm more than happy to talk to folks about this because it's actually very straightforward.
So, Roger, what's your favorite interview question?
Why are you here?
That's pretty darn basic. Why are you here? Uri, anything to add before we?
I actually
jump to our next polling?
interviewed somebody for a different position, not a lawyer position, who walked in and their first question is, why am I here? What's wrong?
Yeah.
That's after they met you?
It was great.
It's funny.
Uri,
Uri, anything to add before we jump through our last few polling questions?
Yeah, my
here?
favorite,
Wrap it up.
my favorite question for the managing partner to answer, which they often don't, not you, Roger, of course, but others, is why should I come here? And many managing partners do not have the answer, and they're going through their process without answering the most fundamental question. Because the real good ones, right? Let's face it, the real laterals producers, they have lots of options. You're not the only show in town at all. So every managing partner needs to have the answer to that question, and many of them don't.
and
Well, and I
Uri,
think all the interviewing partners need to have the same answer. You know, the Houston office needs to be saying the same thing as Chicago office as to what our culture's about and, what our vision is, all those good things.
and John, my favorite question to ask every candidate, if you get the opportunity, is, candidate, this is going so well, and we want to make sure that the firm is well placed to support you and your practice, your clients, and the growth of your practice. So when you do join us, and we're really looking forward to it, what are your first 10 phone calls? Trust me, that gets people thinking in a very, very concrete way, very quickly.
So we talk about firm-wide strategic plans, something in writing that kind of aligns us to a shared vision. And we're obviously a huge proponent of firm-wide strategic planning, some sort of vision and the ship and where it's going and what we're building here. What do you think? You asked, this notion of a written growth plan, which does include some aspect of talent acquisition. You think most of these firms have such an animal? Yes or no, Michael?
Oh, do I think what my opinion is?
Before we do the big reveal, I want you to predict.
Most of them do not.
Give me a percentage.
Oh, I'm going to be generous here and say 40% yes, 60% no.
Roger, what you think?
I bet the no's are higher.
We have seen, I know, isn't that crazy? And maybe it's the including talent acquisition piece, maybe it's we don't have a growth plan, but we have a plan. So you got to consider the question and how it's phrased. We just wanted a yes or no, but geez, people were running businesses in a plan that's, something, and we might deviate, take a different path from time to time, but boy, we're running a business, and a firm strategic plan, I think, is absolutely essential. Uri, comments to this before we move on?
Exactly what you said, echoing what you said. If you have a plan, you might get there. If you have a plan, you might get there.
No plan, you're just kind of drifting with the tide. We did a program with NALP a couple of months ago, National Association of Law Placements, what keeps people once you bring them in, what keeps people. They looked at 15 key factors. If you're interested in this, go into our archive. You can hear the whole thing and get the handouts they gave us. But money, and a clear path to partnership, clear path to what I'm jumping into here. Do we have a path? And can I see myself on that path? I think it's important stuff. Myself. Here's a question we threw in. Michael, you haven't seen this one yet, but let me present it, which is Uri and I concocted this one at around 12:48 this afternoon. But it's a really good question now that I'm kind of thinking about it, and that is your biggest challenge, recruiting. Roger, what's been your biggest challenge bringing on the talent?
The biggest challenge is access to quality candidates.
Quality candidates.
It's the ones you want are probably not looking to leave. The ones that you want that are looking to leave, as Uri said, have lots of options.
And are they going to go to big law or small firm and take a pay cut, kind of thing? Interesting.
I verified this again this week. We've never lost anybody to money. They do well with us.
Michael,
Roger's 100% spot on. its access to quality candidates. And John, this is one of the reasons why a big part of what Decipher does is talent market strategy projects. That's a huge part of what our business is, because as Uri pointed out, if you have a plan, you might get there. And that is a lot of what we do.
The polls are open. Audience, what's your firm's biggest challenge from this list? We can't find the candidates. We're really slow at extending offers. Michael, you alluded to that. You got to get people through the pipeline and get the offer out there. They're going to lose interest if you take too long. Our offers, we just can't compete on the compensation, whatever it is. Our offers they're not being accepted by when we do extend them. We're just making bad decisions, or we're not doing a good job integrating people once we bring them on. So the polls are open, everybody. We got about 70% voting so far. What you think, Roger? You said not enough candidates?
I hadn't seen this slide, but that was my first answer, so I'm going with that.
That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
You got it.
Michael, what do you think? What's going to be you've already alluded to the qualified candidates.
I agree with Roger. It's not enough qualified candidates.
You're going to be overwhelmed when you see this.
Yeah.
Whoa. I see a lot of lack of integration. We bring somebody on and leave them out there, and getting them integrated, getting them cross-sold, and the partners get to know them and trust them. And Roger, you talked about how important that is. So there's a lot of challenges to this, but lack of qualified candidates, big, obviously, with this audience. I'm looking at the clock. It's 2:57. So let me keep rolling. Why lawyers leave? What do you see, Michael, the biggest reason why lawyers put themselves in play and want to go out and find a new firm?
Most people think that the answer to that question is money. It's not money. The reason why lawyers leave is because they don't agree with the strategic positioning of the firm, and they don't see a path forward for their own practice.
So the culture thing.
Yeah, well, cultural and strategy, sure.
I just put this little list together. This is me. What's a law firm leader to do? Here's the guidance I might dispense. Get your firm-wide strategic plan. Get that vision, where you want to grow, and the practice areas and the industry niches and firm size and geographic footprint, all of those things. I think having a conversation among the owners, putting that in writing, I think put it on a 3x5 index card. Keep it really simple. Deliberate, proactive. You're just not waiting for somebody to fill your empty offices. Get your people involved, your current people. They have friends, they meet people opposing counsel, what have you. Enlist them, pay finder's fees to your people who produce successful candidates. Get your people doing the headhunting for you. Let them know what we're looking for. Don't keep that secret. Culture, leadership, business development. Young lawyers ascending in their careers want that training and development, and often firms are negligent. And the succession. Roger, anything I'm missing here as to what you might advise your peers on this?
I look at this and your earlier slide in terms of all the elements that you had up for a minute as platform. What is the platform? What are you offering these laterals? Why is their practice going to be successful with you? Because they're generally leaving, as Michael said, out of frustration. It could be rate pressure, conflicts, lack of autonomy, lack of a seat at the table to have a meaningful vote and so forth. But a lot of them are saying, I'm at a big firm, there's 900 lawyers here, but I can't get a decent associate because, they're all in different offices. I can't bring in clients because I've got rate pressure. So what is your platform? What are you offering them? I think that's super important.
Thank you. Michael, we missing anything, or anything you want to elaborate?
Roger went macro. I'm going to go micro, which is please nail down a lateral partner questionnaire process as the very first step of what you are doing. please nail down an LPQ process. Not only use the LPQ, then also decide when you're going to deploy it and making sure that it actually gets completed. You don't overthink these things. Start with what you would think is the low hanging fruit. And again, if anybody would like to get in touch, I'm happy to share our model LPQ.
We'll give you Michael's phone number, but you can probably find him online. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate the conversation. Love it. And the interaction. Roger, thanks for joining us and sharing your secrets of success. And Michael, thank you for joining us as well. As we close out, take a look at our fall symposium. If it's for women, by women, Chicago, registration's open. Next month, we're going to do a program on artificial intelligence. We'll be doing plenty more on that because it's a game changer. It'll be on the August 21st at 2 o'clock. Our on-demand recording, handout material, polling results will be coming your way. We want to thank our friends at 9Sale. They do search engine optimization for law firms, and they're really good at what they do. Caps for us, and we want to thank them for their contributions and support of our webinar series. And here's the contact information. Roger, Michael, Uri, and if you want to chat with me, I'm out there as well. So please feel to reach out. And Michael, thank you for your willingness to share the checklists. Roger, you as well. And again, thanks for everybody for being with us. It is just past the top of the hour. And Uri, take us home.
Oh, it was a great webinar. I'm just going to go micro and macro. Michael's 100% right about two things. Roger's right about one thing. Michael's right about get the process in. The most annoying thing and why you lose candidates, one more interview, one more interview, one more interview. People also are not attracted to those kinds of firms. You lose a candidate, you get a bad reputation.
You know, the indecisiveness.
Exactly. Who wants to work there?
For the candidate.
And then lastly, exactly like Roger said, everybody good who comes into your office, you have to have a pitch for them. They're not pitching you, you're pitching them. They have options. Checking the boxes is not going to do it. Why your firm? And I would say even deep building on what Roger said, it's not just that we're a smaller firm, because they're interviewing at 10 smaller firms, just like yours. Why your firm? Is it your practice mix? Is it your way of doing business? Is it your rates? Why you? I've talked too much.
I'll call it the unique selling proposition. And I think attractive for young lawyers to move to smaller and mid-sized firms is you can build your book on our platform at a much lower value proposition, much more attractive value proposition if you come to work for the smaller mid-sized firms, and that value proposition, that young book building lawyer might help him or her build that book. So that's what we got for this month, everybody. Thank you for joining us. You'll get a follow-up before the week if I get internet back. So hopefully that will happen. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Roger. Thank you, Michael, and Uri, as always.
Thank you. Thank you
Appreciate
very
it.
much.
Take care, guys. Thank you.
Have a great afternoon, everybody.
Yep.